Do you know the 14 traits of successful chiropractors? We've interviewed some of the top chiropractors in the industry and have identified the common traits that they all share. Jump on over to www.chirobusinessmojo.com to get your free report today.
Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
You got that right. I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you are having an exceptional day as part of an exceptional life. And speaking of an exceptional life, our guest today, Dr. Jay Morgan, has had an exceptional career and an exceptional life. He's a board of trustee member of Parker University in Dallas, Texas. He's internationally known and respected as a chiropractic consultant. He's active in chiropractic practice management to over 500 offices worldwide. Over the years, he's consulted with over 8,000 offices worldwide. He's founder and developer of Chiropractic Associates, one of the nation's largest chiropractic clinics, seeing over 800 patients per week, with over $1 million plus in annual collections. He's also the former vice president of one of the most respected chiropractic consulting firms in the profession. With over 30 years' experience, he's been an active coach to European chiropractors as well, and he specializes in one-on-one coaching, instruction, support, motivation, and management. Welcome, Dr. Jay Morgan.
Hello, good morning.
Morning. Thanks for joining us. I invite you to jump in and fill in any gaps I may have glossed right over in that bio.
All right. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I graduated from Palmer College in Davenport, Iowa in 1984, and one of my instructors there recommended, he knew I was coming down to Texas. I'm not from Texas. I've never been here before. I was totally broke. And he recommended that I connect with someone who was mentoring him, who is a legendary chiropractor named Chuck Gibson. And so he happened to be coming to Davenport that week, so I went down to listen to him, and something connected. And I've always been a fan of being a coach, having a coach in sports and various things, and listening to people who were smarter than me. So it just made sense. And so I joined him, and we totally broke, came down to Austin and did what he asked me to do. And so I had one of the most successful practices in the country very quickly. And, when you go from being completely broke to super successful and having two associates collecting over $1 million a year quickly, you kind of like the person who showed you how to do that. And so Dr. Gibson and I have been best of friends now for almost 33 years. And in short order, I became vice president of Gibson. We became very close friends. And in addition to my practice, traveled all around the world for about 23 years mentoring chiropractors, and have had the honor now of mentoring over 8,000 chiropractors worldwide. About 10 years ago, after being on the road for a long period of time, and Dr. Gibson and I not getting any younger, I retired from Gibson Management as vice president there, and I switched everything that we did online. For simple reason that I wanted not to travel, and I'm certain that doctors didn't want to travel as much as before and have a huge cost. So, long story short, switched everything online, which gives all my doctors that I work with complete support, except they never leave their office. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what I have done now for the last 10 years.
I'm sorry, I'm going to take a break. I've got a 3-year-old who just walked into this room. So hold on 1 second and let me have her go catch up with Mom. Sweetheart, Daddy's busy right now.
Dad, can you come up when you're done?
Okay, I'll come up when I'm done, okay? Go find Mom. Bye, close the door. All right. It's the dangers of doing this at home.
I understand. I raised 2 boys, so I get it.
All right. I will, of course, edit this part out.
Well, that's okay. You should keep that part in.
Well, you've had a lot of experience, obviously, and you've worked with a lot of chiropractors. What are some of the most common things that you see that are really keeping chiropractors from being successful?
Well, it depends on where that chiropractor is in their career. I've been on the board of trustees now at Parker University for about 5 years. It's a great honor to help the students and get off on the right foot. And on a student level, they think that when they get their diploma, that's going to make them successful, and they tend to go. They tend to go into practice with kind of a rose-colored glasses of not reality. And they also tend to go into practice underfunded. So that would be the two things that I would think with new chiropractors. Doctors, like you and I have been out there a long period of time. Practice has changed, especially over the last 10 years. I mean, the whole dynamic of practice has changed. Just shifting away from third-party reimbursement and with federal requirements and documentation requirements. And what happens is chiropractors tend to burn out. They get frustrated. They're working more than they ever have before in their entire career, and they're making far less. And so they tend to burn out. And rather than seeking help and, seeking knowledgeable guidance, someone basically to put them under their wing and help them, they tend to isolate themselves. They do exactly the opposite of what they should do. And it's because of frustration and burnout, and they isolate themselves, and of course that makes their situations worse.
Well, while we're on the subject, let me ask you this. Are you encouraging folks to move away from third-party reimbursement and go strictly cash? I get that question a lot.
Well, that's a question I get also. And the answer is sort of. Your practice your practice is a pie, and there's multiple slices to a pie. And, there needs to be a cash slice of it, which probably should be, 60 to 70% of your practice. And there needs to be a personal injury slice. There needs to be an insurance slice. In other words, there needs to be a balance. You should not be all insurance, because if laws change, your practice changes. You shouldn't be all personal injury, which many practices are. If the laws change in your state, you're out of business overnight. You need to be a balanced pie, you might say, and probably the grander scale or slice of that pie does need to be cash.
Well, I looked over some of the things that you teach on looking at your website. Why don't you share with us some of those subjects and maybe give us a couple of nuggets of your wisdom?
Well, I've been mentoring chiropractors now for over 3 decades, and I don't think there's anything that I haven't seen with chiropractors. And basically, what my program does, it's pretty unique in the profession. I think the majority of traditional seminars where chiropractors go to and travel to and spend tons of money doing have turned into kind of dinosaurs. They're not really practical or effective anymore. Although, I recommend everyone stay connected to something. What I do is totally unique. As far as I know, there's no one else doing it in the profession at this level, but it gives doctors full turnkey support online, so they never have to leave their office. My father used to tell me that it's always best to copy what works rather than create what doesn't. So this enables chiropractors to find out what works in their area, to copy it, to mirror image it. Number one. Number two is every week I email out about a 10-page game plan to my clients. And I'm working with about 400 chiropractors currently around the world. And that game plan covers all aspects of their office. So each week they don't have to wonder what they're going to do to grow and be successful. I'm literally giving them a roadmap. And then there's obviously communication on top of that, which can customize any part of that roadmap. Then every other week we have live chat rooms on the internet where we communicate. It's like sitting around a table and discussing what's working, and you can rub elbows with other successful chiropractors around the country and your area. We have live teleseminars once a month. So rather than traveling to Atlanta or wherever, you can just travel to your phone and have full doctor and staff training. There's so many aspects to the support program. Each week I email out about 5 new patient projects. No chiropractors will do 5 new patient projects, but it gives them 5 options, and they can select one that resonates with them. There's a custom cyber newsletter of education for their patients. Bottom line is it's full turnkey support. It's online. It all comes directly to you. You don't have to travel, and it's very affordable. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm only scratching the surface, but those are the basics.
Well, if I were to hire you, for example, and we started working together, where do you start? What are some of the things that you do to really look at where we're at in practice?
Well, first of all, interestingly enough, my program is only $149 a month. So that's as close to free help as you're going to get anywhere in the profession, I can assure you. And the first thing I would do is I would need to get to know a little bit more about you. Obviously, how long you've been in practice, where you went to school, what your practice philosophy is. I'm not going to push any certain philosophy on you. This is not about philosophy necessarily. This is about making you successful, attracting new patients, keeping them. I'm going to ask you for statistics. I'm going to ask you for your last year to year and a half numbers with your services, collections, patient visits, new patients. And then what I do is I'll do a complete analysis customized to you based on your numbers, based on your feedback. And then we'll outlay a specific game plan for you and then follow it.
Well, let me follow up on that by saying, what are the most common holes that you see that need to be filled?
Well, new patients are the lifeblood of chiropractors' offices. So I would say if you would ask me what is the number one need that needs to be filled, that's a steady flow of new patients in the chiropractor's office. And there needs to be multiple ways, obviously, to get those in. Referrals need to be a significant percentage of that. But depending on how aggressive you are and where you want to go, then there's a combination of internal and external promotions that need to be done on a regular basis. So I would say new patients are probably the number one concern. The number two concern is obviously going to be collections, money through the door.
Do you have a standard advice you give people in terms of what care plans should look like? I hear people, I'm going in to see the chiropractor because I slept wrong and I was told I need to come back 3 times a week for a year. And I hear, one or two cracks, if you will, and my chiropractor said I'm good to go. Do you recommend guidelines for that? Do you have a standard format, or is it a case-by-case basis?
Well, the specific recommendations are obviously up to the chiropractor's knowledge and skill, their analysis of the patient. But ultimately, that's a decision that that the chiropractor has to make. However, there are certain realities that are true in all patients' cases and chiropractors in their offices. Number one is that people will consistently recreate their subluxations. If we're to think that the reason why that person came in your office today is going to go away, that's fantasy island. They're not going to give up golf. They're not going to put their kids up for adoption. They're not going to quit their job. They're going to be recreating their subluxations or recreating their spinal conditions or reasons they walk in your door every single day. So for us to think that we can adjust them once or twice and then be in utopia the rest of their life, again, is totally fantasy. It doesn't work. That would be like thinking that we can brush our teeth once or twice and have a brush and be totally hygienic for the rest of our lives. Or that we can eat a good meal once and then eat 15 hamburgers after that from Burger King and be totally healthy the rest of our life. I mean, nothing in life at all works that way. And so for us to think that consistent or regular chiropractic care is out of the box is totally not true. It's standard, just like anything: nutrition, water, sleeping, health, hygiene, anything in our life has to be consistent. So that's part A to answer to your question. Part B is this: you can always give a long-term recommendation. In other words, a recommendation over a set period of time, and then shorten that recommendation based on the person's response. They're following your recommendations, how they're doing, et cetera, your professional judgment. You can always shorten a longer recommendation. But if you try and take a short recommendation, if you crack over a few days and then stretch that out based on need, good luck on that. If you take a longer recommendation and you shorten it up, the patient will be excited and they'll refer to you. If you take a short recommendation and try and lengthen it up, even though that patient may get good results, you're going to have negative response for them as far as them going out and telling lots of people about you. So recommendations are case-by-case basis. It's depending on the patient, depending on the chiropractor. However, patients all around the world have an ongoing need for chiropractic care. And second of all, you can always shorten the long-term recommendation, but you can't lengthen the short-term recommendation. Last but not least, what I'll say to you is that in my experience of 3 decades, there are 2 ways that you can cheat a patient. There are 2 ways that you can rip them off. One is by over-recommending care, but the by far worse way that you shortchange a patient is by under-recommending care because you think that's what they want to hear, not because of what they need to hear. It'd be like you telling your daughter, "Oh, it's okay to eat chocolate cake," because she wants to. I mean, you're gonna put her on veggies and good healthy nutrition because you know that's what she needs to. So that's the point.
Well, in listening to you speak, it's obvious that you have very good communication skills. Would you agree that that's what chiropractors, what's one of the things we need to get better at? And if so, how do you recommend we improve our communication skills?
That's very true. That's very true. Like my father said, it's better to copy what works rather than create mediocrity. And that's what chiropractors do as far as educating and communicating. They create mediocrity. The way that I learned to communicate is I had a mentor who helped me, and I basically copied the way he communicated, and then I morphed into my own personality. Most of us are not born communicators. Most of us are not born natural personality people. Actually, most of us are pretty darn boring, and we lack those skills. So the way to learn that is by mentoring it and copying it. It's the same as anything. I'm a musician also. I learned to play my instrument, my guitar, by copying my favorite guitarists and learning the way they had techniques rather than just kind of floundering on my own. So the same thing is true with chiropractors. The best way for them to communicate is to find someone that they trust, that is recommended to them, that can put them underneath their wing and teach them how to communicate. That's the quickest way to go from A to B.
Well, you mentioned earlier that chiropractic has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And I think that that's not only is that true, but it's also true that marketing has changed a lot in the last 10 years with what's going on the internet. So what are the things that you have found that are working the best these days in terms of marketing?
You know, that's also a very, very good question. And, I would run a caution flag up the pole to chiropractors, especially new chiropractors who are not that experienced with this aspect of it. Every time I turn on my computer or open my mail, et cetera, there's something new that's promoted to me that's supposed to be the latest and greatest. And you have to be careful. There's a big difference between what works for chiropractors as far as bringing results and what works for consultants that are trying to sell stuff to chiropractors. As you can tell, I'm not real big on selling things to chiropractors. And chiropractors are very vulnerable. I would say that a significant percentage of things that are being promoted out there and the way they're being promoted flat out don't work, and they're very, very expensive. I mean, chiropractors want to hear it. All chiropractors want to hear that they can fill up a wheelbarrow full of money and wheel it to the bank with no effort. I mean, we all want to hear that. I want to join that program too. But the reality is that's fantasy island. The truth is there are a few basic things that work that have always worked. Like my mentor used to tell me, he used to say, don't ask me what's new, ask me what works. I don't want to know what's new and great. I want to know what works. The results are all I'm interested in. And the bottom line, hard, cold fact is what works is personal contact. True social media can be successful in certain markets. I think it's a bit overrated and overhyped, but it is part of it is one tool you need to have in your shed. There's no doubt about that. But the number one way to promote your office and the number one thing that works is personal contact. Me meeting you, me educating you, you liking me, you realizing that it's a good idea to come into my office. And there's several ways that can be done, and that's all part of what we teach in our program.
Well, are there any marketing no-nos that chiropractors should stay away from?
I would say probably the number one no-no these days, and which has turned obsolete, is going to be advertising in the newspaper. Yellow page ads, newspaper ads, you're throwing your money away.
What about Groupon? I've heard of docs doing that.
Groupon is not as effective as it once was, although there's a lot of doctors that do it. You have to check with the laws of your state. In some states, it's not legal to do it, although most states it is. The challenge with Groupon is you're going to get a high volume of new patients that come through your door and a low volume of those that are qualified or want chiropractic care. So, if you're going to do Groupon, you've got to understand that for every 10 people that walk through your door, 9 of them are going to be tire kickers that are not interested. And there's going to be about 1 out of 10. If you can go into that understanding those odds, then you're good to go.
Yeah, I can tell you from my years of experience in electronic retail sales, we used to have a loss leader that they would advertise. It was a VCR for, $39 or something like that. And they used to tell us, the managers would say, well, don't worry that you're not making a commission on this, because that same person's going to come in later and maybe buy a big screen TV. But I think what they were missing was that was a different demographic. What we attracted for the $39 VCR was not going to come in and buy the $2,000 big screen.
Yeah, that as a rule, 9 times out of 10, that's an accurate statement. Yes.
Well, this show is all about providing actionable content for our listeners. So let's break it down. What single piece of advice or series of action steps would you first offer for the new doc? And then let's talk about that for the experienced doc as well.
Well, that's kind of a universal question that would apply to both of them. I would say, number one, you need to develop a mission statement. What is your mission? What's your purpose? What is your reason for wanting to do what you're going to do? That'd be number one. Number two is you need to have goals. I mean, where do you want to go a month from now, 6 months from now, a year ago? I mean, as far as patient visits, as far as new patients, as far as collections, as far as income, you need to have those goals set down. Then you need to map out a strategy, not only a efficient procedure in your office, but also how to stimulate referrals inside your office and get new patients flowing in outside the office. Your practice is like a river. If you want, most chiropractors have rivers with a little teeny creek of water in them, and that's because they don't have enough tributaries flowing into the river to fill it up. So you need to make sure you have a lot of tributaries. You need to make sure, obviously, that you're not under financed, although you may be in a financial pinch. So it makes all the things we just talked about to this point very important to get your act together as quickly as possible. And mostly it all, based on my personal experience, is finding someone that you resonate with, that you trust, like I did with my mentor, and like the vast majority of chiropractors who are successful have done. Find someone that you trust. And allow yourself to be folded underneath their wing and let them guide you. There's nothing wrong with driving a used idea. That's not criminal. You shouldn't be embarrassed about driving a used idea. You need to follow tried and proven principles, and rather than trying to reinvent a wheel, you need to recreate the wheel.
You mentioned earlier that most practices, when they start up, they are underfunded. How much would you say it's costing to launch a practice today?
Well, if you were to go into practice from scratch, at a minimum, you're looking at between $60,000 and $75,000. Not only to equip it, and again, you need to go lean and mean. You don't need the fancy Taj Mahal, Donald Trump office. You need to go very neat, clean, but basic. That's important. Low overhead is the key. The number one stressor and killer of chiropractors is high overhead. Sure, you can collect a lot, but if you spend more than you collect, it's irrelevant. So you need to go in lean and clean. About $60,000 to $75,000 is what you're going to need to equip the office, to staff the office properly. I recommend you have at least one assistant. To start off. There are levels we can discuss on that. but also you need to have money to promote yourself. New patients are not going to fall in out of the woodwork. So you need money to promote yourself. You also need money for at least 6 months to live off of.
What's the break-even point are you finding? Is it 6 months into practice? I know it's probably varies, but do you have an average you could throw out?
What was that question again? I'm sorry.
How long is it taking new docs to break even? Is that in the first 6 months or a year? Do you have
It depends. I mean, your average doctor who is not mentored, et cetera, it takes about 2 years. My average client, it takes about 120 days, 4 months.
I want to shift right now, and I want to go into the big picture of success. You've obviously had a lot of success in your life, but we learn even more from failures or challenges we've had. Can you share with us anything like that and the lessons that you learned?
Lessons that I learned as far as in my own practice, or lessons that I learned as far as mentoring chiropractors?
Well, it can be a challenge in life, in your personal life, anything where, things don't always work out the way we thought they would, and we tend to learn a lot from those experiences.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say looking back at it, I think the biggest key for me anyway is to keep balance. You can be the most successful chiropractor in the world. You can be the most successful consultant in the world. But if you lose control of the rest of your life, if you lose your family, if you become estranged to your children, your friends, etc., what's it worth? So, the key is having balance. You need to have your practice life, but you need to have your social life, your personal life, your family, your friends, etc., like that. When you put your head on the pillow for the last night, the last thing you're going to think about is your checkbook balance. I can assure you. I'm not saying it's not important to have a healthy checkbook, but I'm saying I guess is keep everything in perspective.
Well, when you think of the word success, is there a particular person that comes to mind, and if so, who is it and why?
Well, I would have to look at my mentor, Dr. Charles Gibson, who's almost 83 years old now. I mean, not only has he been successful in his private practice, but also in mentoring zillions of doctors throughout the world. But whenever his name is mentioned, the first thing that's said is that's a really quality, good human being, a good person. And I think that's probably the number one thing you want to have on your tombstone. When people walk by your grave, you want them to say Jay was a really good person. I mean, he really cared about me and really wanted to help. That's the kind of thing you want to hear. Not like, wow, he was successful, but he ripped me off. You don't want to hear that.
Well, you've obviously had a lot of success that we've talked about. Are there any daily rituals, affirmations, things you do every day that help you become more successful?
Yes, I do. First thing that I do to make me successful each day is that I make sure I get up. So each day at this stage of life that I get up is a good day. I have a month-to-month calendar, and this is one of the things that most chiropractors miss, is that they kind of wing it through the day. I have my day completely structured. In other words, before I start my day, the night before, I have listed out the exact things that I need to do and accomplish. And then I check them off throughout the day. Who do I need to call? What do I need to send out? What bills do I need to pay? Where do I need to be? What do I need to have open? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So planning out your day in advance is key.
Well, we're heading towards the landing bay here for this interview. I do have some final thoughts as we go. Do you have a favorite book you would like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I do. I have it right here on my desk, and I refer to it quite often. One of my favorite authors is Larry Winget. Last name is Winget. He is not politically correct, I can assure you. But my favorite book by him is called Shut Up, Stop Whining, and Get a Life. I recommend that's mandatory reading for all chiropractors. Shut Up, Stop Whining, and Get a Life. Got it right on my desk, and I refer to it frequently. It's a classic. It's not gonna smooth your hair back. It's gonna ruffle your feathers, but it's hardcore truth and honesty.
Well, it sounds like that would be not only good advice for chiropractors, but a lot of Americans these days.
That's true. Very true. Very true.
Well, what's the best business advice you've ever received?
Have a mentor. Simple as that. My favorite instructor at Palmer, his name is Rick Burns, the head of the technique department. He was being mentored by Chuck Gibson. He had a very large, successful part-time practice after he got off of school at Palmer. We all thought it was because he was a good adjuster. We didn't know that there was some other factor. And then I realized the other factor was he had someone who was helping him. And, even though he was a phenomenal human being, he didn't make all this up on his own. He had someone who was guiding him. And so what I did, because I trusted and respected my instructor, I just hired his mentor and just basically replicated what he was doing. So my advice to you is find someone that you can trust, who can mentor you and guide you, who can turn the headlights on in front of you, rather than getting frustrated and falling prey to things that are going to cost you tons of money that don't work. Just copy what works.
Well, Dr. Jay Morgan, thank you so much for spending some of your time with us here today. I've learned a lot. I've taken some good notes. We're going to include all of this in our show notes on our website. Appreciate your time, and thanks for spending it with us.
Okay, very good. And shoot me an email when we're done here, because I've got a question for you, okay?
Oh, you bet. Let me throw one more thing out there. What's the best way for people to contact you and find out more about you and what you do?
Several ways. One is my website, which is my name, www.drjaymorgan.com. So it's my name, drjaymorgan.com. You can also contact me directly by phone. My direct line is 512-343-2503, or at any time you can shoot me an email, and it's also my name too. It's drj@drjaymorgan.com. So that's drjay@drjaymorgan.com. Those are the best ways.
All right, we'll get that listed. And once again, thanks so much for being on the show.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.